Hi everyone, this is an audio extra related to my video, What Happened to Mincemeat Pies in the US? While researching for that video, I came across several sources that talked about a murder case in which a man claimed that he shot his wife in his sleep after eating a mince pie, which is a type of pie with some combination of meat, fruit, and spices.
In 1907, the Trenton Times newspaper reported on a strange and tragic occurrence involving one Albert Allen of Chicago and his wife, who was found dead of a gunshot wound. A gunshot wound from Albert Allen's gun. And while we don't have the details of their life together, he denied any of the common motives in cases like this, like a fit of rage, or jealousy, or attempting to collect on a life insurance policy. No, Albert Allen made a rather unusual claim. The mince pies made him do it.
But one story that did happen involves mince pie and murder. Chicago, 1907. A young wife has been murdered, shot in the head by her husband, one Albert Allen.
So he killed his wife and he blamed it on pie.
That's correct.
So the stakes are getting higher.
I originally wanted to talk about the case in my video, but when I looked deeper into the topic, it turned into this twisted rabbit hole in which the answers are not as clear as sources made them seem. This is the story of a mince pie murder, which wasn't a murder at all, and maybe had nothing to do with pie. Let's start with the year. Almost all the recent sources that talk about this case say it happened in 1907.
In 1907,
Chicago, 1907.
Later that year, Albert Allen of Chicago was arrested for shooting his wife in the head.
This is likely because writer Cliff Doe Erickson cites the year as 1907 in his Chicago Reader article, The Real American Pie, which was published in 2009. But this story didn't happen in 1907. It was actually 2 years later in 1909. One night in February 1909, Albert Allen and his wife were asleep in their home on Dearborn Street in Chicago, Illinois. But it was not a peaceful sleep for Albert Allen. He was having a terrible nightmare. In it, he was playing craps, a gambling game based on rolling dice. During the game, one of the other players grabbed the money that had been bet and started to run away. In response, Allen pulled out his revolver and fired multiple shots at the thief. But instead of shooting the thief in his dream, he shot his wife in real life. What happened next is a little fuzzy. Some reports say that the police heard the shots and responded to the scene. But his wife has a different version. That's right, his wife. She wasn't murdered. She survived. In an article by the Urbana Courier-Herald, Miss Allen said that she was awoken abruptly by the sound of a gunshot and then felt a sharp pain. She found her husband standing over her with the gun in his hand. The revolver was still smoking. She recalled that Albert appeared dazed, as if he didn't understand what had happened, but the sight of her blood snapped him back to reality. He got help and then went to the nearest police station to turn himself in. He was charged with attempted murder. Meanwhile, Mrs. Allen was taken to the hospital. Her gunshot injury is described differently depending on the source. Some say she was shot in the head. Others specify that it was her left cheek, or maybe it was her back. The Urbana Courier-Herald, who seems to have actually spoken to Mrs. Allen, says that she received a bullet hole through her neck. Even the severity of the injury is dependent on what source you read. Some say the shot, quote, missed being fatal by only half an inch. Another said she was, quote, badly wounded and would be disfigured for life. But the most important takeaway is that she wasn't murdered. She recovered from the gunshot wound. Reports of an attempted murder in Chicago spread across the country. Many articles included the following quote, allegedly from Albert Allen himself. It was this way. I ate 3 pieces of mince pie at 11 o'clock and got to dreaming that I was shaking dice. The other fellow was cheating and I tried to shoot his fingers off. When I awoke, I was holding the pistol in my hand and my wife was shot. The mince pie angle of the story was of particular interest and was prominently displayed in the headlines. Ate mince pie, shot wife. Result of mince pie nightmare. And Chicago man eats 3 helpings of mince pie with direful results. Now, if you watched my video about mince pies, you'll know that they were once very popular in the US. They were also once considered nightmare fuel. Eating a piece or 2 of mince pie before bedtime was believed to cause bad dreams. This is possibly because mince pie was so rich and heavy that it would give you indigestion, which can affect sleep. So a mince pie causing a nightmare so terrible that you might shoot your wife wasn't out of the realm of possibilities. At least not in the minds of 1900s Americans. While most reporters were focused on the salacious nature of the case and the role of mince pies as the cause, the newspaper from Albert Allen's former hometown of Urbana, Illinois, rose to his defense. The article quoted Allen, "My wife and I have always been on the best of terms. I have never even entertained a thought of harming her." For her part, his wife is quoted as stating, "We have never had a word. The shooting occurred just as my husband has said." And she said as much during the trial a few months after the incident. According to newspaper reports of court proceedings, mince pies didn't come up in Albert Allen's defense, but the nightmare did. On the stand, Allen stated at first that he didn't shoot his wife, but if he did, it was because he was asleep. When asked how that could be by the prosecutor, Allen responded, "Well, as I remember, the night my wife was shot, I had a dream that I was shooting craps with a crowd of men. I thought I made a couple of passes when one of the players grabbed the money and started to run. I whipped out my revolver and began to make smoke around that fellow. That's all I remember." Now, based on newspaper reports of the trial, there are some aspects of the case that don't make much sense. For example, Albert Allen stated that he initially thought a burglar must have shot his wife. This was corroborated by a policeman that testified. He said he forgot all about his dream at first and thought she had been shot by burglars. Police witnesses also said that the gun had not been found in the Allens' bedroom. It had been stashed in the garbage in an alley, but Albert Allen had no recollection of hiding the gun. I spoke to an archivist at the Cook County Clerk's office in Chicago, and unfortunately, they do not have any records from 1909. But the archivist said even if they did, the records would be very minimal. They'd likely only state information like the defendant's name and the verdict. There would not be a transcript of the trial itself. So reports from newspapers is really all we have. But here is what we know. Albert Allen said he didn't remember shooting his wife, but he thought if he did it because of a nightmare he was having about a craps game gone wrong. He and Mrs. Allen appeared to be on good terms, and his wife believed that the shooting was an accident. Mrs. Allen did have a life insurance policy for $775, which is between $20 and $25K or so in today's money. But nothing in the reports about the case or trial suggests Albert Allen was in dire need of money. And ultimately, the jury must have believed Albert Allen. After only half an hour of deliberation, they acquitted him of attempted murder. So, did Albert Allen actually claim mince pies caused the nightmare that resulted in his wife being shot? Maybe, but it seems like that kind of detail that had been so prevalent in newspaper reports of the case early on would have also been included in reports of the trial. Since mince pie wasn't included in articles about Allen's acquittal, it's possible the mince pie was dropped from Albert's narrative of what happened. Or the mince pie part of the story was never real to begin with. Maybe it was just an embellishment added by an overzealous reporter looking to spice up a tragedy. We may never know for sure, but it is really interesting to see how this story evolved over time. Thank you so much for listening to this audio extra. This is a little bit different than my usual videos. It's more of a behind-the-scenes look at my research process. Let me know what you think and if you'd like to see more. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.